Hello, everybody, and welcome to the entertainment headquarters, and welcome to Into the Darkness, my segment on the channel where we do, you know, horror discussions on all things horror within the world of entertainment, film, potentially television. And today's franchise discussion is come at, quite a unique time. This was decided quite a while ago that we were going to do this particular franchise within the world of horror, and it just happened to come around at this very, unique time that the star of this amazing franchise is sadly no longer with us, Mr. Tony Todd, who died a couple of weeks ago, and quite shocked by it all. But Mr. Tony Todd is an amazing actor, an amazing voice actor, an amazing, incredible talent. And I'm sure his legacy is fully made with all of the great work that he's done. But we are going to talk about one of his, major works, and that is, of course, the Candyman franchise. But of course, as always, to talk about the Candyman franchise, I have a host of amazing guests. We have from the Metal Tavern Radio, Mr. DJ Anubis.
Be my victim.
And of course, from Anthony Jordan's Movies and Gaming, Mr. Anthony Jordan. And finally, as you can see, he has such a huge collection behind him. He is known as Mr. Tony of the Dead. Yo.
Hello.
So I'll go around the group. So Mr. DJ Anubis and the screaming of DJ Neko.
Oh, it's Tony's fault. Okay, at least we narrowed it down.
I thought it was Neko shouting down the stairs.
No. I mean, it could have been the cat, but they're a ways away.
Yeah.
So I don't even remember if I saw the original in the theater or not. I don't think I did. But when I did finally get to watch it, it instantly became one of my favorite films. Like, I love everything about it. I love the plot armor, the lore, Tony Todd's acting and role in this. Like, he is synonymous with the Candyman, Daniel Robitaille. The soundtrack is amazing. Virginia Madsen was great in that film as well. The gore is top notch. As we go along, obviously there are going to be some problems within the sequels, as there always are whenever we do these things, because they tend to get worse as we go along. But the thing is that this movie is still like one of my favorites, and I oftentimes feel bad because I overlook it sometimes when I mention my favorite films in horror. But that's because there's just so much of it. And because this particular franchise didn't have 20 films behind it. So you think about Friday the 13th, Halloween, Nightmare on Elm Street. These have long lists of sequels and stuff and reboots. And this one, the last one, which was a bit of a reboot, not really necessarily a remake, but a reboot, which took place a decade after the last sequel. So it's like it was kind of like a forgotten franchise for a little while there. But Tony Todd, not just with the Candyman role, but for his role in horror, is always going to be iconic. He's always going to be one of those staples in the horror franchise. So I'm very excited to talk about him. That little quote that you put up before you started the intro was beautiful. I really love that. It's a great homage to him, and I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. Anthony Jordan, your take on, Tony Todd and the legacies left behind?
He's a phenomenal actor. Just Candyman, his horror contributions. I mean, just how haunting he was in Candyman, that you can feel the sadness behind him. Even like Night of the Living Dead, the remake, a remake that there are people who like it better than the original, who he took the character of Ben and took what was done in the original and complemented it, but did its own thing. And his another gets overlooked is his science, the stuff he's done for science fiction. Like, I know you love the episode, but for those who haven't seen it, look for a Star Trek Deep Space Nine episode called The Visitor. He plays
Yeah.
Jake Sisko, in his performance. Not only will it rip your heart out, but it's just so masterful how he was able to give a performance that complemented the actor that played the younger Jake Sisko. Like, it felt like a natural older person. In the entire emotional weight of this episode, it was on Tony Todd. Whatever he did, he just put his full heart and gave it his best, whether it was horror, science fiction, voicing a character on a cartoon show for kids. He always treated his performances like they were art and gave them the weight and gravitas they deserve. And I think he's someone that a lot of actors can learn from, that no matter how big or small a role is, it still deserves your very best. And also, from everything I hear, he was a just very stand-up guy. I've talked to people who have met him at conventions, and they've just said out of all the celebrities we met, he was one of the sweetest.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Tony the Dead, your thoughts on Mr. Tony Todd?
I always like Tony Todd. I like seeing him in things, like seeing him come appear in Hatchet, small parts like that. I always like, but obviously he's known for Candyman. But I think, I don't know if I saw Candyman or if I saw Wishmaster first back in the day, but I obviously remember him as Candyman. But the second thing I think of is him in Wishmaster.
Yeah,
he's like Valentine, Johnny Valentine. I always like that. I like his presence and stuff. The voice is just, like everybody said, it's iconic in that. And with conventions, I have a small story that happened to me. I never have technically met him, but I have talked to him from across a convention hall, because I was talking with Casper Van Dien.
yes,
Johnny Rico in Starship Troopers.
Yeah.
And he's saying about how he had a kid named Tony. And as I'm saying, I'm Tony. He's like, I have a son named Tony. And he started singing Tony Chestnut. And Tony Todd's on the other side of her. And he's like, what are you saying? And I go, not you, Tony, me, Tony. That's the only interaction I had. It was a funny, across convention. Not that any Casper Van Dien would probably remember that, but that's a memory that's stuck in my head with Tony Todd.
The fact that you've got a memory of him and actually were in a room with him is legendary.
Yeah, I'm pretty jealous of that, because it's always when they pass away, I regret not finding a way to kind of meet some of these people, because you get busy with life, man. I'd love to go do a lot of conventions, horror conventions, G-Fest, all that stuff. So it's whenever someone passes, it's like, fuck, I missed out. It's like, I've never met Robert Englund. I would love to do it, but when, I have to find that time to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As for me, of course, Candyman is iconic. It is probably one of his best roles, if not the role he's most known for. But like Anthony Jordan's mentioned, not only was he in Star Trek Deep Space Nine, but he had a key role in Star Trek The Next Generation, playing Worf, his brother. And in fact, I do know that he auditioned for Worf, but didn't get the role. But because they were that impressed with him, they created the role of Worf's brother for Tony Todd. And then because he became such, pivotal actor within the world of Star Trek, he also made an appearance in Star Trek Voyager, is one of the Herosian generals, and the Herosians, and that was probably one of my favorite roles he did in Star Trek. He also played the funeral director in Final Destination. He was a prolific voice actor. I remember him voicing Cold Stone in Gargoyles, which I absolutely love. It's a great animated show, one of the best shows Disney's did back then in the 90s. And
Fairly
of course,
good show.
yeah, a great show. And I'm not a big.
Can't forget Grange from The Crow. He's in The Crow.
Yeah, Andy was in The Rock. The general he played the general or the colonel he played in The Rock. That he did a great job in there. And I'm not a gamer, but I know that Spider-Man 2, the game Spider-Man 2, is probably one of the best Spider-Man games that they've ever done. And he voiced Venom in that game, and I've seen a lot of comments online about him and his voice work in that game. So, like you say, Tony Todd has had such an amazing career, and he will be sadly missed. But we're gonna, do our best to, represent and praise his legacy with these films, the Candyman franchise.
Wasn't he the voice of Zoom, or in the Flash?
I think he was, yes.
Yeah, I
And
can't think
he
of
was Transformers: Revenge of the Fallen. He was the Fallen.
Yeah,
it's like such a voice, like a deep, kind of like powerful voice. Like
Stands out like James Earl Jones. Yeah.
Yes, definitely. I wish he had like an icon. Like, yes, he's done so many voice roles, but it's a shame he didn't have that one particular character that was in a film series or an animated series that he'd be remembered for forever and ever. I know Cold Stone for me is a really sympathetic character if you ever go back to that show and watch it. And of course, Venom, I actually wondered if he did the voice of Venom in the movies, but I found out later he didn't. But let's talk
Here's
about
another one he did. In Transformers Prime, he voiced Dreadwing, who was one of the better characters in the show.
Oh yeah, was it not Dreadwing?
Yeah, he voiced Dreadwing.
Dreadwing, yeah. Dreadwing's amazing. It's a great character. But let's crack on and get talking about Candyman. So, Candyman is an American supernatural horror film series originating from the 1985 short story The Forbidden from the collection Book of Blood by Clive Barker, about the legend of the Candyman, the ghost of an artist and son of a slave who was murdered in the late 19th century. Its film adaptation, Candyman, directed by Bernard Rose in 1992, starring Tony Todd as the titular character. So let's crack on and talk about Candyman, the first one from 1992. So who would like to start? Anthony Jordan, do you want to talk a bit about this? Because I know you're a big fan of this one.
Yeah. Okay. My first introduction to this movie, I wasn't interested, but my mom rented it on pay-per-view. That being said, I was in the room and seen a few scenes, and not that this was Tony Todd, but the one scene that had always stuck with me was the scene towards the end where her hair burns up. In that scene, that was like the only one I remembered from the movie, and throughout my whole life, I always remembered it. My first exposure was actually Candyman 2, which we'll get to, but when I finally saw this one, it was a absolutely just brilliant movie. The creepy score, the cinematography, just Tony Todd's performance, and even knowing how they centered it around like a real building like Caprini Green. A friend of mine, and shout out to him, Lethal One Gaming, he's from Chicago, and he had told me that, yeah, that neighborhood was just super violent. He said, even hardcore gang members were afraid to go near that building. It was so violent, but this movie was just so brilliant, so haunting. The weight and gravitas Tony Todd had brought to the role. And one thing like I don't hear too many people talk about is if you were to edit just a few snippets out, you can completely frame this movie and leave it ambiguous as to whether Candyman was real or if it was all in Virginia Madison's head. But it was just a great, just supernatural, urban gothic horror story that it's one of the, and sometimes I cringe at this argument, but it's one of the horror films that actually stands aside as an actual work of art. And a lot of that goes to the writing, but there's also a lot that goes to not especially Tony Todd's performance, but even Virginia Madison's performance. Not that anyone played it took it easy in this movie, but those two worked together to carry the dramatic weight of this movie on their shoulders. And I wish they would have done more movies together.
Yeah. So Virginia Madison plays, of course, Helen Lyle, who, her and I guess our classmate are, because they're newly graduated from college or university, and they are doing I guess they're doing a paper on the legend of the Candyman, which is where this thing starts. And she basically has this professor who I guess she wants to one up and do a paper thesis on the Candyman, and they actually end up going to this area to the Cabrani Green homes to look around. And when they first get there, it's an absolute it's just full of spray painted walls. All the buildings are boarded up. It's really a down and out area in Chicago, in the ghetto. I thought Virginia Marsden, though, she for me was a very strong actress, and her character's a very strong character throughout this. And she's then studying about the legend of the Candyman. They end up hearing, different stories about it by one of them's this cleaner at the university where she's doing her work, and she finds out that that there was a murder in an apartment in one of the tower blocks in this area, and there's a witness to it who is Anne Marie McCoy, and Anne Marie McCoy witnessed this or heard this murder happen in this building where this legend of the Candyman kind of started. So she and our friend go to this building and then go up and they look around and they actually find an abandoned part of the building. And a few minutes prior to that, when she was in her own apartment, she realized that the building is very much, similar to the building that they go to visit, where some of the walls are paper thin and they're hollow, and there's no back to the walls, and there's
the medicine cabinet in the bathroom.
Yeah, there's a mirror in the cabinet, and when you go through the mirror, there's an opening and crawl spaces and all this thing, and she kind of figures out.
That was inspired by something that actually happened.
Oh.
I forget the details, but it was basically the same thing where you can take the medicine cabinet out and go into the other apartment, and apparently they had a break-in in their apartment because that's what the person did, and the writer heard about that and used it in the story.
Oh.
Well, also the whole, saying Candyman 5 times in a mirror, that's actually kind of a play off Bloody Mary, which is also an urban legend that, from the white side of things, but it's off the play off of that too as well.
Yeah.
I've never actually said Bloody Mary.
Well, it's funny because I was thinking about this as I'm watching the movies, right? And I've already familiar with the first one and the last one. So I watched the last two again for the first time in a while. And even in every single movie, especially the first three, whenever the actors are saying it, like even in their characters, they start to say Candyman, Candyman, and then they hesitate.
Yeah, yeah.
Like there's this hesitation, like it's done on purpose for our viewing viewership, but it's just funny that even in the characters themselves who say it doesn't exist, as they start reciting it, they're like,
What if this isn't just a myth?
Right.
Like
Yes.
I'm gonna die, literally.
Yes. So, like you say, they discover the crawl space in the building that they're at, and she goes behind. And when she goes behind, she's looking around. And at this time, she kind of figures that this myth of the Candyman is through like a psychopath or something who broke into the walls and so forth and killed people. And she just thinks it's part of like a myth in the beginning. And then all of a sudden, like you see, she crawls through the wall space and she sees this amazing artwork, you know, this mural where she's crawled through, which is quite haunting.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, sweet, I think what's written on the walls is it's sweet to sweet.
Sweets for the
to the
sweet.
sweets. Yeah.
Sweet for the sweet, yeah. So that's written on the wall. So once she sees that, and she sees that, you know, people know about the Candyman legend within the project area. And then she sits down and she speaks with I think it's Anne Marie character, who has the baby Anthony. She sits down with him and she starts telling her the story of what happened with the Candyman. And she's now starting to picture that this isn't just maybe a murderer running around the streets, that there's a real legend behind this, that there's a real kind of mythos behind it all.
Yep.
So, and then obviously she goes to visit her husband, who I knew straight away when I seen the husband that there was something going on.
Oh yeah.
I think the delivery made it noticeable that there was something going on. So this is them looking in the mirror where she sees Candyman. And, you know, once she sees it, that's where all hell breaks loose.
Yep.
So who would like to continue?
Go ahead, Tony.
Continue with what happens after that?
Yeah. And
well, she doesn't like believe it because then she like talks. How far after this did she talk to that little boy? And
what happens is after they visit the mother, and they do that thing with the mirror. That is when she decides on her own because she ran out of camera footage taking photos of everything.
Yeah.
And she basically wanted a picture of the mural on the wall. And so she goes back and gets her pictures, and then she bumps into Jake, the young boy,
Okay.
and she goes to knock back on the door to speak to
and she wasn't home.
She wasn't home, and then he tells her about his own experience with the Candyman, where a young kid goes into the outside bathrooms, and is killed.
Yeah, like he gets his thing cut off or something. Like, isn't that what they did? Like, cut his thing off?
They like cut into his stomach, I believe, and ripped his stomach open.
Okay, I took it as they. Yeah, I don't know what I'd rather. I think if I had no dick, I wouldn't want to live.
Well, if you had no dick, you probably would die because you would bleed to death.
Maybe.
Well, it's one of your most central arteries is in your penis.
Why you would have to find a little worm first on the hook, you know.
Oh yeah. What do you think I do? He's thinking of my dick. Yeah, but yeah,
sausage.
She like you were saying, talk to that little boy, and he tells her the story, and then he's like, the Candyman's in here, and
Yeah, it's like a
bathroom.
local bathroom. Yeah.
Could you imagine? She's like ready to gag in it.
Mm-hmm.
And you imagine how bad that smelled. And then it has like sweets for the sweets and that in shit on the wall. It's so disgusting. And then she is ready to leave, and like these guys walk in, and she's like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm just on my way." And then like they basically beat her up because one of them is, "I'm the Candyman," and he has a hook and that. So it's like,
and he
this
does
is the
something
guy.
horrible. Yeah, he's the guy who puts the razor blades in the sweet and gives them to kids. And basically, he's took on the persona of the Candyman. So this is where there's this confusion of, was it a myth? Or is it this dude that's doing this to kids and he's went around and he's killing people because he carries a hook, but he's got like a gang members with him. So he's kind of probably heard the mythos of the Candyman and took it on for himself.
Yeah.
And that always becomes like a big staple throughout the series, is how the myth, is it real or not? Because, you know, later on we find out that the real Candyman is like, believe. That's what he wants. He wants people to believe. And so when you have people out there doing the murders themselves, it takes away the myth, the power that he would have normally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which kind of plays into the reboot remake kind of scenario as well. So obviously she is severely beaten and is taken home, and there's also the professor that she wants to embarrass, who she kind of wants to one up. She thinks she knows what she needs to know about the Candyman, and he goes, "Well, tell me about the Candyman. Tell me how you're gonna one up me," kind of thing. And he basically, she can't give him an answer, and then this is when he actually tells her the story of the Candyman. So he actually has all the history on the Candyman, because he's a philosopher. He's like, talks about urban legend, and he discloses to her about the Candyman, which was Daniel Robital, an African-American man born in the late 1800s as the son of a slave who grew up to become a renowned painter. After he fell in love with and impregnated a white woman, her father sent a lynch mob after him. The mob sawed off his right hand, smeared him with honeycomb stolen from an aviary, attracting bees that stung him to death. His corpse was burned in a pyre erected on the site where Cabrini Green Homes was eventually built. So not only is this a legend and a legacy, it's also kind of a haunting story, because he's haunting that area. So she discovers this information, and obviously she now she's got the photographs, and she's kind of recovering from the incident she's been through. She then, after, talking to her friend, who I thought was beautiful in this, by the way, who our friend was Bernadette, who's played by Casey Lemons. She tells her, "Oh, I think we've got a book deal for you to write a book about your story and all this." She's then heading back to the car, Helen Lyles, and this is where she bumps into the Candyman. You finally get your first experience. Yeah. And it's not just the scene stealing performance of Tony Todd, like the eeriness and how he walks and how he presents himself. It's also just the voice alone. The voice alone, when you first hear his voice, is just outstanding.
Even the lighting and how it's shot. Like the black in his coat looks almost like it's disappearing into the shadows.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, so the lighting, and that's another thing about this I have to mention, is the actual music in this. I absolutely love the music in these movies. It's like the music, it's haunting, it just captivates the moment and the everything that goes with it. And this is where she has her first experience, where she kind of blacks out. Next thing, she wakes up in the apartment of where she had been talking to Anne-Marie McCoy, and she can hear screaming. Next thing you know, she looks down, she's covered in blood, and she looks upon, and then there's the severed head of Anne-Marie McCoy's dog and a baby, and Anne-Marie absolutely screaming. She's absolutely terrified because her baby son Anthony went missing. And obviously this is where Helen gets obviously arrested for that murder. And as the plot progresses, it's like the scenario of it all is you have a missing child. Has Helen lost her mind? Is this actually happening, or is it all in her head?
Yeah, when she got hit in the head with the hook, it's like, did it cause some kind of do some brain damage and cause some psychological issue?
Yeah, so it makes you think, basically, is Tony Todd's Candyman real, or is the man who was arrested the Candyman, but because she's been hit in the head, like you said, it's made her have some sort of psychological break, and she's manifesting all of this, and she's actually going around and she's butchering and killing people.
And hard enough, like hitting the head that causes brain damage. I had a friend that had it happen. It will change your personality.
Mm-hmm. And as you know, as the plot progresses, you then see all the twists and turns of, the Candyman haunting her in her dreams and in her apartment. Bernadette is brutally murdered, and once again she is sent to the psych ward. A sleazy arsehole of a husband who you knew from day one was shagging the freaking student. He's basically planning on leaving her, and this is where she returns when she escapes from the psych ward after the death of the doctor that was examining her and talking about, which I love that scene. I love that scene, especially the scene where Tony Todd's hovering over her.
Oh, that's brilliant.
That scene was just outstanding, and his death. And the great thing, I talk about horror films and how what I love is films that generally scare you. And the thing where you can tell a jump scares about to happen in modern films, so the music will change or it'll go quiet and the characters be looking, and you're just waiting for the jump scare. With this movie, with certain scenes, you did not know that the Candyman was going to show up. Like the scene where she's in her house and she opens his arm with the hook came bursting through the wall. And then when she's sitting talking to the professor and to the doctor, and she sees Candyman 5 times, the next thing he's sitting there looking at her and he starts convulsing, and then that freaking hook comes through his body, and his next thing it looks like he's proper gutting him when Tony Todd's like grunting when he's ripping through his flesh. It proper was creeping me out. It made us feel real uncomfortable. And that's the kind of horror I like in my horror films, not this fucking CGI, there's a ghost going, what the fuck? I don't need that shit. I want to feel terrified, or I want to feel uncomfortable. Which a film that I did do that this year was The Substance. Real stuff in it that fucking. Mm-hmm.
It's your voice is still catching up to you.
Shit in it.
This one can leave you really uncomfortable when nothing's happening.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Well, that's how the soundtrack works to its peak. Is that you can just have her just going around picking up more information for research, and that music's always there. Like you're always expecting something to come out of somewhere, and it's really really eerie.
The music is really a character in the movie itself.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one thing I really really appreciate about this, that some people don't like, is that
from the film
the tension never lets up. I love this about these kind of horror films. The tension never left. There's no comedy. It doesn't give you any relief. It's like it's always there. And even if it's not so much involving the Candyman himself, it's like other things like her husband and his new lady that he moves in, and there's like tension there with the marriage and him already moving on, assuming that Helen's like out of her freaking mind. And so like that's tensive, and then it just keeps going and going, even all the way to the end where we get the beautiful shot of her husband getting his just desserts. So I mean,
yeah.
But there's never any comic relief, and I really, really like films more when they just stay horror, like just keep me horrid.
Yeah.
Look, sometimes a comedy can be used to appropriately break up the tension, but in a movie like this, it would have just been completely inappropriate.
Yeah, out of character. So like we see it like with Evil Dead, it works because it's worked from the beginning. It's always had this weird comedy horror aspect about it, but I could say for sure, like when we think about like Freddy Krueger, the first movie is terrifying, the second movie is terrifying until the very end, and then of course from Dream Warriors on, we started getting more lighthearted, and we started getting more of Freddy's talking and character coming out, and it would be a little more comedic in his way of delivery. So it's still fine with Freddy, but some films it just shouldn't happen. I think that Candyman's good the way it is. It's to the lore, and it doesn't get funny at all. I like that part of it.
Yeah. And after she discovered that obviously her husband had been with this younger student from the university, and she basically realized she had lost everything. She had nothing left. She then goes back to the projects to like basically give in and go with the Candyman, because it's either do that or get killed. And he has the baby Anthony, and basically he is going to sacrifice not just her or him to the giant spire, the fire spire that is set up, the bonfire, because every year the residents, I guess, celebrate the myth of the Candyman by lighting a bonfire. So they set up this bonfire, the baby's in there, the Candyman's in there, and this is where she has a change of heart and decides, I can't allow the baby to be sacrificed. And she knows basically as well, if she gives the baby back, it may clear her name of, if the events had happened. And that's exactly what happened. She basically sacrifices herself. He passes away. She is killed, but the baby is saved. And the mother who, she gets her baby back. She then realizes she was innocent all along, and that, she sacrificed herself for a baby. And it gets to our funeral, and I found this very emotional, that at the funeral is literally just maybe a husband, he's whole, I call her the whole, and obviously a couple of other people, and then next thing you know, there's just a row of people from the projects that have came in to show respect to her for what she did, sacrificing herself, and the ones that have basically been keeping the legend of the Candyman alive. And this is where, you think all's done and, everything's over with, until the husband gets a change of heart. He's now feels complete guilt that, his wife has now died. And, the people from the projects basically have got more respect for her than he does. And he stands in the mirror, and I don't know why. I don't know if you get like this urge to do it, or if he just did it off his own, but he said her name 5 times and she rises from the grave. And you have this beautiful...
The shot where she appears is one of like the most haunting shots in the movie.
So So a lot of people, I knew straight away, especially when she was first arrested for the first murder, and she was ringing him, and he wasn't answering the phone, and he told a lie. He went, "Oh, I was asleep," but you got that shot of a bed that had been unslept in. You knew straight away he was shagging the student.
Yeah.
So there is sometimes I think I've got sympathy for him, and there's sometimes you're just a douchebag, because I sometimes think if you're in a loveless marriage, just get out. Don't before you cheat.
Something tells me he was one of those kind of guys that constantly did this. Even when he probably got with Helen, it was probably inappropriate for him to be doing it.
Yeah, she was the student, probably. That's how I look at it.
You can like go to at the end too. He's like thinking with this new girl, how long till she replaces me with a younger guy?
Yeah.
Well, you can see when he's in the bathroom crying, and she's like, "I'm making us dinner," and when he's not giving her like the response that she's wanting, she's going from being nice to like tossing the meat on the counter, like she doesn't give a shit, like,
yeah,
like, So it's weird. The whole thing was weird, but in all, Candyman for me, the first one, is just one of my favorite horror films. It's because of the mythology. It's because of the eerie music. It's because it's very serious. It's like you said, Anubis. It's one of them films that stays serious and plows through the course series with a serious tone without trying to add humor. Or even serious films that always add like a daft goofy character that gets his comeuppance. There was none of that in this. It was trying to be a very serious, thought out, thought provoking horror movie that also had a lot of believability and like you see, real life stuff in it. Like you said, the projects in Chicago, which was heavily featured in this, is and probably was a real thing, which I think
it should
gives
be
it
noted,
more credibility.
It did have a little bit of comedy in it because it had Ted Raimi as a cameraman. So there's your comedy.
Yeah.
When you think about it, this movie, it wouldn't take too much trouble to convert this into like a really good stage play.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah. I mean, the whole thing is great. The backstory to Robitaille is a beautiful one. We get to explore that in the sequels, but that works. Just the lore of it all, the ghost of Candyman, and like everything that's been explained in the movie itself, easily could be a stage play.
Mm-hmm. So do you rank this one higher up in like your horror films that's been made?
Oh yeah, it's a 10 out of 10 without question.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, not for me.
Of course.
I like it, but like I don't like. Okay, like where she's with that doctor and she has her hands tied up. Say she did get out of them because the Candyman shows that he loosens it. What if like she has somehow loosened it? We don't see that. How did she gut him and throw him out the window? That's where it's like, is Candyman real or not? And then at the end, if he's not real, didn't she just like set herself up to look like the hero because she put the baby in there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like if Candyman's not real, it's all her. Then she murdered her friend, killed the dog, took the baby, put it in a pile and it was going to set on fire. And they thought they saw the Candyman because she had that hook, and all they saw was the hook going down into the pile or the bonfire. And the kid's like, Candyman. And then that's where they start to light it on fire and everything. So they think that and that's the other thing. If he's not real, why was there a body burning at the end?
Mm-hmm.
That's what I don't understand. Like, is he real? And why did he
is real?
Yeah, we as the audience seen the body burning, but it doesn't mean that people watching the bonfire can see him burning.
Like that kid was the only one that seen the body burning.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't say that though. They don't show like
there's plenty of people, kids alike, that say that Candyman, they had seen him. Like, it's not like he hadn't been seen. It's all about believability. So some people
you have to believe him to see him. Some people have to rationalize
something like the supernatural, even for real life for us. Do you believe in ghosts? Have you seen one? For Missy and I, for us to sit there, we always talk about, I wish I could move into a haunted house because I really want to see the supernatural. There have been times in my life where I thought I did experience supernatural stuff, but I try to rationalize what might be an alternative to what happened or what I heard. So in this case, you have this myth and this urban legend that runs through urban America or urban cities. And as Kevin pointed out, like there are portions of, especially as you're growing up, we learn throughout the entire series that they raise their kids on these stories about Candyman. And so it's like anything else. You believe these stories and then you start believing in the boogeyman. And some people as adults say, like in the fourth movie we're going to get to, they try to outlast the urban legend. They try to rationalize as adults that maybe I was just crazy back then. It didn't really happen. But that isn't always the case. So he did exist, and he's even proven when she comes back to destroy and kill Trevor. So it's almost like Candyman is like this catalyst for other people that either die from his hand or some other way. They end up coming back as well. So it's a really weird conundrum, but in the end, he is real. It's just that he spends a lot of time trying to prove his existence to the doubters, whereas the doubters are the ones trying to rationalize that it's just Helen being a crazy bitch. That's how they wanted to rationalize it.
Yeah, the first half of this film was about, like, does he exist? Is it all in her head? The man who was arrested for beating her up, is he the man just who is the Candyman? But then as the film progressed, it then became more that the urban legend and he was real. And by the end, that's what I guess it's trying to express, the film, that the existence of the real Candyman is really, really does exist, which plays into the second one, which we'll talk about.
But I don't think the kids saw Tony Todd Candyman. I think they think the other guy was the real Candyman. I think they saw him, but Helen's the one seeing the real one. I think they just know. Like, I mean, Daniel, he was a real person. Like, I know that was real, but I just don't. I don't know how she would have thrown him out of the window like that. Like, that's where I'm like, well, that part doesn't make sense to me. If I don't know, maybe super strength, but again, you don't see her do that, so I don't know if she really did that.
If it's to be from her point of view, unreliable narrator.
The only thing that's difficult in the first one, in regards to the psychiatrist or whatever it was, is that unlike the second movie where you actually have video evidence of something supernatural taking place, you don't have it here. So I don't know if they just didn't have cameras in there or what the deal was, but they didn't use it in that first film. The second film is where we get to explore that a little more, like, oh shit, what the fuck is going on here? Like, I don't know what this is. So even that detective in the second one, she has a second guess herself. She's like, I can't explain this at all.
Yeah, so
that's true.
So the first film basically tells you the beginning of the myth. It tells you that there is a myth about a Candyman, and that you perish in that area back in the 1800s. So then we'll get to the second one.
Before we go, I just want to add to you that.
Do you want to give your ratings of the first one?
Well, 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I still would love to have seen what the sequel would have been, where it was now Helen as the new legend.
Which kind of was hinting at in the end of the first one.
Yeah. Well, to me, in my opinion, apparently they were going to work on the sequel to where it was going to focus more on Robotai's and the Helen lookalike. I think her name was Carolyn. The interracial relationship they had, but apparently it was too risque back then. But the other problem is when you start adding in Helen or other people, you kind of take away the smoke and the iconic role that Tony Todd laid out. Like, I would have, I just wouldn't have liked that. I like him being the centerpiece. This is one of my issues going into the last film, is he's not really a priority there. He does make an appearance very briefly, but that's I was just worried that like not only just because from a fan point of view, but I think Black America were like, dude, you have to replace our boy with a white chick, really? Come on, because they were already crying about that shit going into
it's not just that. It's not just that though. I thought as well, if they add more people who's been slain by the Candyman and they themselves become vengeful spirits, it then becomes like a Hellraiser scenario with different Cenobites. You've got so many different vengeful spirits, and then you're like, will it be a case like, say they did that, and then you got to the fourth film, would it be all the vengeful spirits teaming against one other one, which would be the Candyman?
Well, that's funny you mentioned that, because after Freddy versus Jason, they had played around with the idea of Candyman versus Hellraiser. They actually did that.
That wouldn't.
Well, they actually were close on that, but they were apparently also dabbled with the crossover between, I don't know why, Leprechaun and Candyman, but Todd's like, I'm not doing that. That's ridiculous.
I do know after that. Yeah, the only one that I do know that was legitimately getting worked, because they had a script and they had a title, that was Child's Play on Elm Street, which was going to be Chucky versus Freddy Krueger, which I don't know how the hell that would have worked. But as you know, the Charles Lee Ray, who is Chucky, he uses voodoo magic to go into the descent, place his spirits in different areas, different souls, different bodies. So for me, doing something like that, using voodoo magic, I think having Candyman versus Chucky would have been better, because they could have linked the two. Because you could have had an origin of how Candyman is able to go and do what he does, because maybe Daniel Roberto's history and family line might have been involved in voodoo somehow, and then you could have linked that back to Chucky in how he is able to use voodoo magic to put his soul into different bodies. So that could have worked for me personally. But let's get on to the second movie, Candyman, and what we'll do is at the end we'll just read all the films like we normally do and just say which way we like them. Do we like the first one better than the second one, like we normally do? So Candyman 2, Farewell to the Flesh. So Candyman Farewell to the Flesh is a 1995 American supernatural horror film directed by Bill Condon and starring Tony Todd, Kelly Rowan, William O'Leary, Bill Nunn, Mark Clark, and Veronica Cartwright. Written by Rad Ravitch and Mark Kruger. It is a sequel to the 1992 film Candyman, which was an adaptation of Clive Barker's short story The Forbidden. Its plot follows a New Orleans school teacher who finds herself targeted by the Candyman, the powerful spirit of the murdered son of a slave who kills those who invoke him. So, straight away, just like the first one, I love this for the music. I love the setting that we're now in New Orleans. And, I love the fact that they build on the history behind the Daniel Ronball's character, Robert Toll's character.
Just say Candyman or Daniels.
Daniels.
Yeah, we know who you're talking about. Yeah, I don't know. So I can't say the last name either.
Robitaille.
So as you know, with the sequel,
hold on, let's wait for Anubis to get his bag ready to stop crunching around. You good?
Gummy bears.
Gummy bear? Where's mine?
In my pants.
So, we have Kelly Rowan playing Annie Tarrant, who is also another great lead. She's not anywhere near the lead in the first film, but I do think she is a good follow-up.
I agree.
And I didn't mind this film. You know, when it came to certain films that we've reviewed, when you look at some of the films reviewed, like when we did Subspecies, obviously we preferred the actress that played Michelle in the second one, who continued the series, better than the first actress. And you know, when it came to like Wishmaster, I don't think any of the protagonists really interested us as much in the other films. And when it came to Pumpkinhead, the first film is for me still the best. And the protagonist in the first one is still the best. But she's a good runner-up, though. Kelly Rowan is Annie Tarrant. You then have Bill Nunn as Reverend Ellis, William O'Leary as Ethan Tarrant, who is the brother, Veronica Cartwright as Octavia Tarrant, and yeah, I'm not even going to say them names. So basically, the start of this movie, we'll kind of get through this plot faster. At the start of the movie, the professor from the first film, who has now actually wrote a book off the back of the events of the first film about the myth of the Candyman, which is basically stolen the fucking idea from Helen, because that was what Helen was going to do a thesis and get a book deal and write a book about the law and the murders surrounding the Candyman mythos. Now, he's actually done that. And the only thing I didn't get was the connection between the book and the father of the lead, because basically there's a book signing in New Orleans. You're then introduced to the brother, who goes to the book signing and basically accuses him of, you know, getting his father murdered. Tells him he's insane. During the book signing, to prove that it's all just a joke, he then says the Candyman 5 times, the professor, and the brother confronts him, and the brother Ethan confronts him in a bar. There's a bit of a bar scrap. The professor goes into the toilet, and who turns up? The Candyman, the amazing Todd Hall, fucking rips him apart. And because that happened, Ethan is then accused of his murder, which then starts a huge investigation. And that's when you're then introduced to Annie, the sister, who's working as a teacher in New Orleans, and then she gets involved in the plot, basically. And it's all about the history of the Candyman's origin and how somehow the Tarrant family are linked to the Candyman's past and to the woman that he had this love affair with way back when in the 1800s. Mm-hmm. So, in all, DJ Anubis, what's your like? How did you find this one compared to the first one?
Well, none of them really compare to the first one. But this one does do it fine. Like, usually the first sequels are okay generally with horror. Like, you usually do okay. A lot of the ones we've already done with franchises, Evil Dead 2, Warlock 2, Pumpkinhead 2, they're all very solid sequels. But they'll never really compare to the original ones in terms of the debuts that broke out. But I do agree. I think Kelly Rowland did a really good job in this role. It just gives more backstory to the Candyman, Robitaille, and how he came to be. And so I do like that a lot. So story-wise, it's still very strong. It just plays more upon the myth and how her family is connected to the legacy of Robitaille and all that. So I like that part of it. So overall, yeah, it's pretty cool. I mean, I don't know if necessarily going to New Orleans was like that important, but I guess they were trying to show just how far the urban legend of the Candyman rolls and where origins come from. So I guess the South is what they were trying to use as far as like the backstory for Robitaille and all that.
Anthony Jordan.
This was I love this film. Is it as good as the first one? No, but it's still solid. And this was my first one Candyman movie. Like you said, the music, the atmosphere is still there. But also, for as far as the atmosphere, one other thing I love about this is the narration from the DJ that plays throughout the film. It that got he had his voice and delivery was so haunting, and it feels like he's telling us a ghost story.
Mm-hmm.
And
That
you know
reminds
what?
me of the DJ from the Warriors.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too.
I was just about to say this part of the film with the DJ had to be inspired by the Warriors. The fact that they had a DJ who basically threw out basically what I call different chapters of the movie. He's narrating events and giving you information, and then basically helping the plot along by the information that he's like the tales and the things he's saying out of his mouth during
Could
the
also
Mardi
be
Gras.
it could also be influence from The Fog. Stevie
Mhm.
Wayne, she was on the radio.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
But yeah, I like that little kind of like mystery thing with the radio. And do they do that in that you like the movie or Christmas Horror Story with that like they do that in that too. It's
Tales of
Isn't
Halloween.
that
William
Shatner?
Shatner. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I like that kind of stuff when they're reporting like things going on, like you better be careful out there, people. You
Mhm.
don't know what's around the corner. You know, it's kind of neat when they do that.
My first time watching this, it went on at like midnight during a blizzard.
Mm.
Another thing like I like about like we mentioned that there's a connection with her to Candyman, and I love the slow build up to a reveal. Like they still, even though they didn't have the same resources, you can tell the intent was still there to make the best movie they can possibly make. And
Yeah.
I think this is one where they, even though not as good as the original, but it's a tall order to fill, it still did a great job doing what it needed to do. So
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, I really like I said before we started this. I like how they've kind of built a story. They've built a lore and a mythos and a story behind Candyman in the very first movie, and in the second one, it's not about building a lore and a mythos behind the Candyman because that's now been established. This is about building his history and his backstory. And I like how it flowed from the first one to the second one. And, you know, the story of the professor being killed, the brother being framed, and then the sister now trying to clear his name that he's not a murderer, and trying to, like in the first one, is the Candyman real? Is the brother psychotic? Is she psychotic? And then you could tell the mother, Octavia, had a secret, and then it's all revealed that the mother is the granddaughter, or you know, she's like in the family line from the daughter that was born from the woman that the Candyman had this interracial affair with. That's how they're related, because they're basically relatives to the blood, which I thought was a great twist and a great reveal that they were interconnected. And you know, I loved all that. And then obviously, like Anubis said, is it in the head? Is it real? Is it fake? Have they lost the mind? Is Tony Todd's Candyman back, or did he stay dead in the first one? But then what give it some more light that he is a real entity is when you said, when Ethan, you know, events are going on and other people are being killed throughout the film, Ethan is then in the prison, and then the rough and tough, the bad cop, decides to basically see Candyman 5 times in the mirror at the police station, and he's suddenly, within seconds, he's killed by Tony Todd's Candyman. And then it's revealed that the good cop, we'll just call her the good cop, she sees the actual CTV footage from the room and sees that Ethan's lying on the floor crippled in fear, and in a partner, he's suddenly being ripped apart by something behind him, but you can't see it, which is what basically gives her the belief that that Anne is telling the truth, that it is the real Candyman that is doing these murders, and that's why she lets her go. And another part of the mythos is that we didn't see in the first one, which I think is really great, is that in the first one, the Candyman's doing his killing spree and building his legacy and having his name spread out by all these kids and families in Chicago, but his power comes from, and his soul comes from a mirror that's in New Orleans. So it's like, if you didn't know that, he could never be destroyed. He would always be there in some way, shape, or form. And I thought that was a great twist as well, having the mirror to be the thing that ends him. And how he is ended in the second movie, where the mirror is smashed by Anne, who in the beginning has great sympathy for him, and you see her, crying at the flashbacks of him being ripped apart by the bees and being, kind of strung up by these people, and that young kid who goes, "Oh, look, with them the candy," or all of them go, "Oh, look, it's the Candyman." And you basically see all the bees around him, and you see him getting his body.
Sweet.
Yeah, which is where the saying comes from. I just thought it was fantastic.
And that's something that I love about the Candyman characters, that unlike most of our villains and iconic roles, his is like a real story of tragedy. And so like you feel the pain, you understand his pain, why he's doing what he's doing. It wasn't like he was with the white woman who was totally against him. Like, she was in despair at what happened to him. So he like, even in death, he still longed for her. So I really liked that whole aspect. Like, they never gave up the love story that was a part of his tragedy. So I just think that's amazing about the Candyman itself.
Oh, I agree. Couldn't agree more with you. Anthony Jordan.
I already.
Oh yeah, Tony.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No. So, what's your overall thought on the second one?
I like the second one a lot. I think it started off a little like, and then it like redeemed itself, I guess. Like, I feel like the story in this one is better than the one in the first one. I feel like this one should have been the story of the original movie. Like, I like seeing the origin. Like, I kind of figured right off the bat what was going to happen. Like, I never saw this before, but I kind of figured, she was, part of his family and all that shit. I kind of saw that, and they're like, that's the slave quarters. We weren't allowed to go in there. It's like, well, we know where he came from and all that. So I like seeing that. I like getting the family history and everything. Very interesting. I like finally getting to see how it took place back in the day and how barbaric it was. And
that's what I liked about it, is that you hear about the story of him being, abused and treated horribly in the first one, but to actually see it take place and you actually see it happening in the second one just adds more to the lore and the sympathy of the Candyman character.
That scene is just so uncomfortable to watch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. It's
yeah,
terrible.
That's like another great performance by Todd, because his despair as they're torturing him is like believable. Like, it's really good.
Yes.
Absolutely.
He's got real fear in his eyes. That's what it looks like.
Yep. Yeah, and I think too, because you see it, the story and like all this stuff. I believe that he's real more in this one than the first one. Like, I have no doubt that this, that he's real in the second one. Well, in the first one, like I said, I was like, is he or isn't he? I think a lot of people, even after watching the first one, are still like wondering, like, was he really, was it her? It depends on how you take it. It's like the Blair Witch Project. is there really a Blair Witch, or did they just get lost? You know, you never actually see it. But I mean, you see Tony Todd, but it's like, is that in their heads? But in this one, it's like, I had no doubt that he was a real entity and, you know, doing all this stuff. And I do like how the ending, like, you know, basically, all right, now, is this like when he's like, be my victim, right? Is that he wants them to basically give their life up to him and then, like, in a way, become like another Candyman? Or is that he just wants to let
that
him
certainly
go?
worked for Helen, so possibly that's what he's doing.
I think it has to with his power comes from belief, so he needs that one person to be that definitive victim that's going to keep the belief of his and his power strong.
Well, I think the remake or the reboot explains it more, is that he has a hive. And the people or the souls within his hive keeps him going, keeps his soul strong, keeps his legacy strong, which it does play out in the reboot, basically how there's different people that are carrying the Candyman lore or basically pretending that the Candyman or telling the story of the Candyman. So that's keeping him, the real Candyman, Tony Todd, alive, which is kind of explained more in the reboot. So when he's saying be with, you know, when he says that to them and he says, be my victim, I think he's saying, join my hive and you will keep my legacy alive. Because like Helen, even though Helen became like him, if she went on a killing spree like him and people are saying her name 5 times, they would have to link her story or her legacy into his and go, she gained her ability because she joined the Candyman, and then they'd go, who's the Candyman?
That's what happens in the 4th one.
Yeah. And that's how, well, so I think that's basically the 4th one or the reboot explains this part of why he says that and why the book he says, be my victim.
Yeah. Okay.
So
I just wanted to see how other people looked at that. So okay, I agree. That's how I look at it too. But yeah, I did like the second one a lot, to be honest.
I love the second one. I like the setting. I like how they did things different, having, like you say, the DJ. I liked, like you say, that the emphasize and put more depth into his backstory and actually tell a real. This film was all his backstory, where you only got snippets of it in the first one. This was his backstory, which is what I like about it. It's like a sequel / prequel, all rolled into one.
Yeah. Agreed.
So let's get on to the 3rd movie. The greatest.
Let's get cracking, Kevin.
I'm gonna need more coffee.
Let's crack on.
You don't need some alcohol with that one?
Alcohol would put me to sleep. I need to be able to stay up.
Well, it's funny it has to, because we're on to talking about Candyman 3, Day of the Dead.
That's right.
That is right. The Day of the Dead. So where do we go with this one? So Candyman 3, Day.
I said I think I got enough coffee to get through the movie.
Yeah.
Right. Well, all I can say is I wish this was filled. But it's not. That is from a few weeks ago, and it's still there because I look at it and it's my sign to say don't buy any more wine. So anyway, let's crack on. Let's get cracking, as Tony likes to say. Or
Me? I just mocked you, pal. I like when you say, let's crack on.
Let's get cracking.
Release the crack on.
What? Oh, wait. It's
I need
not
some
that
crack for this one.
Yeah. Crack.
So, Candyman 3, Day of the Dead, sometimes titled just Candyman Day of the Dead or Candyman and Bored as Fuck, is a 1999 American supernatural horror film directed by Turi Meyer and starring Tony Todd and Donna de Erechio. I cannot even say Ereco. It sounds like erection.
Donna DeErico.
Yes. It is the
I'll tell you
third
why I know.
installment. I bet you will. It is the third installment in the Candyman series in the direct sequel to the 1995 Candyman Farewell to the Flash.
The Flash?
The Flesh, sorry. I'm talking that fucking fast. I'm not excited, you see. I'm not excited to talk about this one.
Flash, whatever this fucking movie.
Yeah. Yes, its plot follows Caroline, the daughter of Annie Tarrant and descendant of the Candyman, the powerful spirit of the murdered son of a slave who kills those who invoke him, who finds herself targeted by him on the eve of the Day of the Dead. And just to point out, this film, you know, because the first one was in 1992, and I think the year accurate, the first one, the second one's in 1995. This one, even though it was filmed in 1999, the plot is set 25 years later in the year 2020. Yeah. And I believe the reboot is actually a middle reboot because it's set in between the second one in this
Well,
one.
we know this one's not accurate because they don't have the face mask for COVID. So
that's very true.
Yeah, Matt Groening didn't write the movie.
Yeah, it's accurate, but it didn't have events that are accurate. Put it that way.
Yeah.
So
and we're in a new city.
I seen this film about 5 or 6 years ago. I went to watch it again and I got stopped. So I can only remember it from the events that when I watched it many years ago, but I know I just wasn't as impressed. So I'm going to hand this over because he loves it so much to Mr. Anthony Jordan. And I'm going to let you.
I thought you were going to give it to me. I was going to go running with it.
Okay then. Well, Anthony Jordan talked a lot about the second one. So I'll tell you what, Mr. DJ Anubis, you can do us the honors.
Okay. So this is by far the worst one of the bunch. Shocker there. But
it's nowhere near Pumpkinhead 3, is it?
Well, Tony and I are Pumpkinhead 2 fans, so we don't get too involved there with that. But I rented this on VHS when it came out, obviously because I'm a fan of the Candyman series.
Mm-hmm.
And there was another big reason is at the time I was collecting these Playboy lingerie books, the magazines, and Donna was a playmate. So I was like, oh, this is going to be good. I'm going to see a lot of good titty. I'm going to be happy. And of course, she was half naked, but she wasn't quite naked. So
you got more tits in the first one.
Yeah, but this one, you know, you think of Playmate, you got to see some boobage. No. Got that they see a nice little ass, a little bit here and there, but
just some hard nipples.
But you can't act your way out of the box. That's a big problem right there. The other thing is this movie is like all over the fucking place. Like there's just so much going on. Like the gang that steals the paintings. Why it is like when she says Candyman 3 times that other people are dying first. That one I don't get. Of course, they have to do that just to keep her alive for the movie, but just in theory. Then you have the really crazy detective in this. I think it's this one. Is it this one or is it the last one?
Yeah, it's this one.
Yeah, this is this one. Yeah,
I remember the cop.
Yeah,
that's not this one.
That's the Purcell dude.
I forgot to say about that. I like that they brought that guy back. I wish they would have kept him around more. You know, like he helps them out later on, like a Robert Englund kind of character.
He's so gorgeous. He's gorgeous too,
though. Every movie I like his jacket. It's different from the first one in a certain way, but it always looks badass. You know, and warm.
Well, he's just a badass fucking actor, man.
He looks
But
like
yeah,
he's like
the
8
thing
feet
is, this
tall.
movie couldn't quite figure out where it wanted to go. I mean, it did a good job of connecting Carolyn with the second movie.
Yes.
So they got that part right. But the problem is that I don't know. The writing was really bad for this one compared to the other two.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's just like the acting, like the actors are just not very good. Like I really hated that fucking. Well, one, I hated the fact that we have this gang that steals these paintings, and then they turn out to be this like Candyman cult. So okay, we're gonna go with that. But then when Candyman shows up, we don't get to see any of the action. We just hear about the crunching and the tearing up. I'm like, come on, man! Like these are the persons you want to see get torn to fucking shreds. I want to see this.
Yeah,
they were so cringe.
Like I like that's the only thing I did like about this is you had the idea of a Candyman cult that worshipped him. They could have done so much better, or done so much with that idea, and I just think they fucked it up. And like you said, you don't really see much of the action or much going on. And yes, I understand it's straight to DVD. It's made for today's standard. It will be a made for streaming film.
It's a direct video,
so I can understand the budget restraint, but you don't need a big budget. You just need great storytelling, actors that can act the fuck out of a part, no matter big or small, and just save a little bit of that budget you have for at least one decent kill. Like I think the best scene in this whole entire film is the scene that I've placed in the intro, where he opens his chest and you get to see, his rib cage and things. I just think that scene's phenomenal in this.
Even that was, I think they probably saved it all for that whole ending scene. How, basically, when we get to it, we'll talk about. But
so Anubis, carry on.
Well, yeah, that's basically it. So basically, we have her in Los Angeles. She's part of an art gallery with a guy named Miguel. And on opening night, they have a bunch of the pictures depicting Candyman and different things, part of the lore. So obviously, he starts kind of mocking her a little bit, saying, "Hey, do you really?" Because he knows that she's a descendant of the Robitaille family. So he's like, "Yeah, why don't you go ahead and say the name 5 times just to show that, it's just bullshit." Because she believes it's bullshit. Or she believes it's real, but her friend, tells her that, it's just not real. So she's like, okay. So she ends up saying it 5 times and nothing happens, of course. Candyman isn't the kind of guy to just show up on cue. He comes when he's ready to come,
That's not how it's supposed to work, though.
I think he turns up to those that he's got a real interest in when he wants to. So with Helen, he turned up not right away after she said the name. The same thing happened with Anne in the second one. But straight away when that arsehole of a cop who he's got no time for said his name, he killed him straight away in the second one. I just think he chooses if he's going to show himself or not.
It's kind of
because that's what he does with the gang. He just chose to show up at that moment. It's like, which again I would have been fine with. I just wish I could have seen the aftermath.
You could almost parody it where you have someone say his name and he shows up right away, and then someone else say his name, and you cut to a scene of him stuck in traffic.
It's like even though
trying to get there, man.
That would have been they could have done a horror comedy parody of that. Put it in the next. Put it or something. Yeah, I was gonna say that rebooting Scary Movie, so put it in Scary Movie, the new one. What you call it though? Like another way they show that if you look at the reboot, how the very first scene in the art gallery where that dickhead art director's there trying to bang that chick. She says his name 5 times, she gets her throat slit within a matter of seconds. And then the girls in school.
Yeah.
The school girls, he basically takes them out straight away.
Yeah.
But that's not my favourite kill in that movie. But we'll get there.
We're not on that one yet. We're still talking
we're
about
not.
the snoozer.
Yeah, so
I know. I want to talk about it too.
So, Anthony, the floor is yours. Give this film as much love as you'd like.
Well, this film could be like, it should come with like FDA approval because it can be an effective cure for insomnia. Like, I rented it the other day, and like, you saw the text I sent in the group chat, me on the
It did.
chair, eyes closed, and it was my live reaction. Like, I couldn't bring myself to care. I was so bored. I was constantly checking my phone, watching videos on YouTube at points, and like paying attention as much as I could. But like, I just didn't care. I get the way this was set up, but the fact that we're told this is his descendant right away, and the fact that there was, after we had a great slow build up and reveal, like, it, I didn't even realize this was like set in 2020. It just like confused.
You should have got to it like I did, Anthony. I just paused it, went back to that early scene with her in the underwear, and just kind of rubbed one out, and then went back.
And even like Candyman's reveal in this, if you were to compare it to his reveals in the first two movies, it just like falls so flat. They tried to go for like how similar to how they first showed him in the first movie, but just the lighting was, it was too brightly lit. I'll admit I do like the idea of the Candyman coat, but I mean the Candyman cult, but one good ingredient in a soup made out of expired dog food does not make a good soup. It's just Tony Todd, like, he still, to his credit, he tried his best to give a great performance, but there was nothing good about everything else. Like, even the writing, I feel like, took some of the gravitas away from him.
Yeah.
It's just a very boring, just forgettable movie.
Well, I'll be honest with my thoughts, and then we'll move to Mr. Tony. I generally think when they did the first one and they did the second one, the first one didn't do that great at the box office, but it got so much. How you could tell, if people are wanting to see a film or if they're going to hold back because they don't know how it's going to turn out, they find out of the rentals. If a film gets hired out loads more than they expect via rentals, like a few more million, back then, that's when they were like, oh, this film has potential. And I generally think when they went into the second one, they had good intentions, they had a great script, a great concept, and Tony Todd went into the second one with the same passion and enthusiasm as he did for the first one. When it came to the third one, I generally think he looked at this as a paycheck. Not that his performance was terrible. They did the best with the story to continue, on from the second one, which that's the only thing I like about these films. It's consistent with its storytelling.
Well,
It's
I don't
not
think
like
Tony is. I never got the impression that he's like a difficult actor. So like,
no.
He may not have liked the writing of the story, but he cares about the character, so maybe that's why he just kind of did it his way. But I don't ever see him being the kind of guy who's like, fuck this shit, I'm not doing this movie, and walk off the set. I just never saw that him being.
I don't think that at all. I just think if you look at the quality of the first two, even though the second one's not on the level of the first one, it's still a respectable sequel. I just think with the third one, because of the budget restraints and the story wasn't on the level of the first one. And who's to say is Tony read the script, read the story. I like how they continued like a connection from the second one. But once he was filming the film, yes, he's got that passion. He would have given 100% for the character. But maybe after it came out and he seen the first edit, he might have said, this isn't the film I thought it was going to be. Because I don't know if the third one was always intended to be a direct video or if it had the potential to go to theaters, but because of editing or whatever, they chose, like, this is better off as a straight to video release.
Yeah, it could have been while they were making it. Like I know, obviously, from being on set and everything, there are things in. It's like, oh, that was really good, or like, oh, that was so much fun, and it's like you're in the moment, and then when you see it, it's like, oh, oh, it must have been editing, could have been but like again, while they were making this, they could have been having a great time, and maybe they cut things, and I agree though. I think maybe he this was a paycheck. I think he also was like, well, I am Candyman. I want to honor that, and
he loves the role. He loves playing the role. He loves the lore. He loves the fact that he's built kind of a fan base around this character. And he probably thought, yeah, I want to play this character again. But it just
work
didn't
is
turn
work,
out.
I guess.
Yeah. You get many actors who are up there 1 minute, and then next thing you know, they just make anything to make a quick buck. And sometimes it's for personal reasons out of their control. For example, Nicolas Cage. He is an Oscar-winning, Oscar-nominated actor. He's made so many great movies, but then throughout the years, his career has kind of been up and down, where he's came back to theatrical releases or big budget releases, but then he's done a shitload of straight to streaming and straight to DVD releases. Later in his career, Bruce Willis has went down that road. And I'm going to be honest, the last 5 or 6 of his straight the DVD or streaming releases, I couldn't watch. I thought they were unwatchable. His facial expressions never changed. He was one note. At the time, though, it hadn't been revealed he had his illness, or he had not been diagnosed. And I always found, well, how come when he's playing John McClane in Die Hard, he's got great facial expressions, great, body language, mannerisms, and he's acting the hell out of all his roles. But then the last 5 or 6 releases, he's had the same face, same tone, and I just found it really strange. I thought, this isn't the Bruce Willis that I love and adore. And then it was revealed he had this illness.
Like, apparently he had been actually secretly battling that illness for the longest time.
Yeah. Well, now that it's been revealed, I've got nothing.
Bozeman, man, I thought that dude was healthy as a clam, and he ends up dying. I was like, holy shit.
Yeah, even like to go off topic for a sec, but it had gone so far back that when he did that one movie directed by Kevin Smith, like Kevin Smith said a lot of unflattering things about how hard he was to work with, but when it came out that even back then he was dealing with that illness, to Kevin Smith's credit, he did issue an apology because he didn't know that.
Yeah, I was thinking, I was frustrated when I watched a lot of these straight, because I like Bruce Willis. He's one of my favorite actors, action stars. And it's like he did a back-to-back straight to streaming or straight to DVD release, and I watched both films, and it was like I had watched the same film. And most of the scenes, he's just walking around with a gun and turning and pointing, or sitting down in a chair and just staring with the same look throughout the entire film. And I was thinking, yeah, couldn't have went from this actor that I adored to just doing these shitty cash grab movies for no reason. And then when it was revealed he had this illness, I was absolutely heartbroken, and it all made sense.
Well, Cage does it too, but his reasons are a little bit different. But
his are financial.
At least,
well, no, I don't know. He, from what I understand, he got kind of tired of Hollywood in general. Like the what's the word I'm looking for?
It was too for lack of a better, it was too processed.
Yeah, it was just more like the atmosphere. Like he felt like it was a little bit too pretentious, and that's kind of strange coming from him because he's been in that industry for so long. But
now he just does stuff that he knows the people behind it are passionate about.
Yeah.
But he also did get himself in a lot of debt, and he's had to pay a lot of money back. That was revealed like a few years ago, and he started just making films. But I do think even the straight to streaming or straight to physical media stuff, some of it's pretty good. Like, I love Pig. Pig is great. But then you've got things like he's never done a Western, and he did 2 Western movies. And I always said Nicolas Cage would be perfect in a Western. His 2 Westerns that he released were terrible. And then next thing you know, he goes back to mainstream Hollywood and he does fucking Renfield.
Yeah.
Which that wasn't a great film by any means, but I didn't mind him as Dracula. I thought he just had fun with the role.
I thought it was a fun movie.
As I was hoping it would be.
I guess with Bruce Willis, probably his last actual good movie would have been Death Wish.
Yeah. Yep. Agreed.
Still a far cry from Bronson, but yeah, it was not bad.
Yeah, look, that movie, I've said before, if you can get past no Charles Bronson, you're 3/4 of the way towards a good time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, let's move on and let's get cracking, Tony.
A lot of Anthony's mentioned today.
What's that?
Yes.
I said there's been a lot of different Anthony's mentioned today.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, there has.
So let's get cracking with See It, Candyman. So the first thing I need to ask Mr. Anthony Jordan is, did this one put you to sleep?
No, actually, I found myself, even though I didn't wind up having the best opinion of this film. And by the way, that was by me watching Candyman 3, but although I didn't wind up having the best opinion of the film when all was said and done, I thought watching it, I was at least engaged. I had issues the way through, but okay, I want to see where this goes. They're actually doing interesting things here.
Mm-hmm. So we'll talk about this one. Candyman is a 2021 supernatural horror film directed by Nia DaCosta, who co-wrote the screenplay with Jordan Peele and Wynn Rosenfield. It is a direct sequel to the 1992 film of the same name and the 4th film in the Candyman film series, based on the short story The Forbidden by English author Clive Baker, and set between the films Candyman Farewell to the Flesh and Candyman 3 Day of the Dead. So there we go. So it's an in-between sequel / reboot. And I really quite enjoyed this one. I know it didn't do as well as the thought at the box office. I think a lot of people are disappointed, but I kind of liked what they were trying to do with this. They were basically trying to, the Candyman legend had kind of gone away, kind of died down, a bit like the film series had kind of disappeared. It kind of left for a while, and the legacy of the Candyman had kind of disappeared. And then you've got this artist who's struggling for ideas or inspiration, who's called Anthony. And he then, he has this, story about the Candyman. And it all starts off where he starts investigating it. And he also has a beautiful fiancée or girlfriend who he adores. So this is Anthony.
Mm-hmm.
I would not say no. And this is his beautiful girlfriend. And basically what ends up happening in he kind of the power of the Candyman kind of comes over him. And for each painting he does, there's a murder. And for each murder, he gets more drawn into the mythos and the hypnotism of the Candyman spell. And it ends in quite an interesting note. So, Anthony Jordan, we'll start with you. Oh, no, well, I tell you what, we'll start with Mr. Tony the Dead this time. What's your thoughts on this one?
I really like this movie. I like...
I do.
This is the second time I watched it now, and I forgot the whole, I remembered it, but I forgot who Anthony really was. And I was like, oh, that's right. I forgot about that part. But yeah, I really like it. But the one thing I like is the kills in this. That's what the other ones were lacking, because I mean, obviously times and budget.
You physically got to see the kills as well.
Right. And even if you don't see them do it, you hear it. It's gross. You see the blood drop, and like with the girls, like you were going to say in the bathroom, like that was really clever how they did that. Like, and I feel like those were the age appropriate ones, like in a movie that you like. Nobody wants to see a kid get killed, but these were like teenagers, which we know in horror movies they're up for grabs, or I shouldn't say that, they're up for kills. But like yeah, I love that. I love the art dealer in that part. You like where he's like looking over here and he's cutting the what do you call that, the screen, and then it's actually getting cut over here. It's like so creepy. It's like you can only see him in the mirror and that. It's like it's really cool. And I also do like that it's a, what's his name, Sherman something is this Candyman. I kind of feel like this movie too is like there is no second and third movie. This is like direct, like kind of like what they did with Halloween,
Yeah.
But good.
Yeah.
And I like that this is like a, they talk about the original one and they tell the story, and it's a cool like cutout kind of things, shadow puppets kind of thing. Is right. That was this one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
I watched them all. Yeah. I watched 2, 3, and 4. Well, technically 2, 3, and Candyman right in a row the other day, and then the night before I watched Candyman. So like they're all kind of like, But I like the animation with that. I like the storytelling that like there was another one, and I do like the idea of, each one of these Candymans has their story of, and it's all about like, basically because they got beat down because of the color of their skin and stuff like that, and were wrongfully accused. Like we don't know the other stories of the other Candyman that they show, but this Sherman one was interesting, how he actually just wanted to give the kids candy. And then because they found the razor blade and the candy, they blamed him for it. Now, granted, he's kind of creepy, but that really, they found out that's all he really was. He didn't do anything. And I think that's interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, so like obviously the story goes, obviously Anthony's getting more obsessed with this tale of the Candyman lore and the history, and people are dying around him. He gets stung with the bee pretty early on in the movie, and when he's stung obviously with that bee, obviously I think that's like the Candyman kind of gets a hold of him after that bee sting. And obviously, as the plot goes on, he then starts talking to somebody who works in the laundromat, who you had a flashback to, of being somebody who witnessed the attack and the kill of who they think is the Candyman. And then after that event happened, you have the flashback where he's talking to his sibling, and sees the name Candyman 5 times in the mirror when he told him not to do it. And then you actually do see his sibling get killed by the real Candyman. Instantly. And basically that sets up him, basically, who was a non-believer to now be like a believer, and basically is trying to keep the Candyman lore alive. And he's basically like the cult people, where he believes in it now and he wants to kind of help the Candyman in some way. I don't know if that's his way of grieving after, or feeling guilt after the death of his, if he's it was his I think it was his sister, wasn't it?
Sister and her friend, I think.
Yeah. And the next thing, that's all revealed, and then the biggest reveal, which kind of I had an idea was going to be the reveal, is that Anthony is the baby that was saved in the first film. And the stories he's sharing about Helen saving her and basically, basically sacrificing herself and clearing her name of the murders. He is the baby from the first one, but he is now still kind of in this world.
It's like he was marked by Candyman as a baby and that it was always going to come back.
And obviously, like Anubis said earlier about the kids that were living in the ghetto, families, generations of families, one by one, are telling the mythos of the Candyman. And when they're little, they might not believe it, but then when they get older, they kind of grow out of it. And but then it's a continuing cycle. But obviously, this guy loses his sister and a friend. Because he didn't believe it and now believes it because of what's happened. He's trying to keep the Candyman mythos alive. And like in the second movie, when she destroyed the mirror, you thought because that had his soul in it somehow, he was gone. But it's like that thing. If you keep believing in him, and if people keep on basically telling the stories of the Candyman, his soul is never going to die. And there's different, I guess, I would say different avatars and different people who basically embody the story in the rituals of the Candyman that are keeping the real Candyman alive. And that basically with this poor guy who gets killed by the police, he looks kind of like, obviously looks like the Candyman. He clearly has some sort of mental illness, but you had the same in the first one where you had the gang member who was pretending to be the Candyman, who was putting the blades in the sweets. So there's another guy that's keeping the Candyman legacy alive by pretending he's the Candyman. This guy's doing the same, but he's doing it in a good way. So as long as you've got these individuals that are keep on believing in the Candyman and seeing the tales and bringing the story to light, he's never going to die.
Right.
And I feel as like that's what this film was about. This film was about, yes, the films in the past are gone, but as long as he's still being remembered and people are still obsessing over the tales and the stories, he's never going to die.
Yeah. Yeah, that's still see that's kind of like a thing like within the second one, like you said, the mirror. It's like that should have been like he's gone, but like you said, the stories keep him alive. So, but it's almost right away, like the mirror's broken. Hey, all right, and then like do 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 do. It's like, well, what was the point of the whole mirror shattering? Like and then in the third one, what did they do in the third one? And then he like, oh, the paintings, like they destroy the paintings or something?
Yeah, this paintings.
And it made him like almost like in Wishmaster where he walks through Kane Hodder's character and it like kind of like rips apart and explodes. That's what this kind of reminded me of. And this is, we're talking 1999 in the third one. That's when everybody's trying to do the CGI and it looked terrible. And that's one thing I forgot to say. The third one to me felt like I wouldn't even say direct to video. I would say it felt more like it was like a TV show.
Yeah.
It felt
like a mini series.
Yeah, like a mini series, but like not good like Salem's Lot. Like this was it was just bad. And it was late 90s that has that 90s look to it, which I like, but I didn't like for this because I went back to back to back with these movies. But the lore and everything with it it's I totally lost my train of thought. So cool. I do that a lot. I lose my train of thought.
Bill, you were talking about the third movie. That's understandable.
Yeah. I wanted to get away from that one and talk about this one, but I don't remember what I was going to say. I guess that's what I was going to say. Yeah.
Right. Anthony Jordan, your thoughts?
Well, like I said, hearing you guys talk about it I do kind of want to revisit this now because it's given me a better opinion. Like, it's not that, okay, I didn't think it was a terrible film, brilliant from a technical standpoint, great cinematography, and I like some of the stuff they did, like with the mirrors, which I wish would have been expanded on more. Like with the art dealer, how we see Candyman's reflection and they're getting killed. My problem is I thought for my taste it was just a little too heavy-handed with the social commentary.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
I felt like I was getting lectured too much, and that just sadly left more of a sour taste in my mouth, even though there were things I did like about the movie.
What do you mean by that though? Like I'm not busting your balls. I think I know what you mean, but like, what do you mean?
But it was just. Ugh. Also,
for me, the issue is it lost track of what made Candyman iconic. So even though we've been playing with the idea throughout the entire series that there is this hive of spiritual, vengeful spirits that come out of the hand of Candyman, it lost control to the point that the director, who also had handiwork with Jordan Peele, who's very heavy-handed in terms of social commentary, his prerogative. Okay,
I think I know what you mean now.
So what ends up happening is, so towards the end of the film, it loses two things. One, when we talk about vengeful spirits, right? So obviously Candyman's always been an urban legend dealing with the inner city ghetto and the stories of his mythology.
Yeah.
But should it just apply to Black people? Because here we have a man who was tortured, maimed, killed for loving a white woman. So now we've kind of thrown that out to the window as like white people bad, including Carolyn, who happened to love a Black man. We've thrown that out the window. So at the end, I believe it's Anthony's girlfriend or wife, when at the end he's been shot and killed by police. So now we're going into the social commentary. And so what she does is she summons Candyman. And what he does is he ends up killing the cops. I think they're all white. Yeah. And then, of course, unlike any other previous thing where he's going to kill the person that summons him, disregards that totally. So we've thrown that out the window. Now he's just more of like the boogeyman that Black people can call on white America or whatever. I don't have problems with people writing the movies they want to write. I just feel like in this particular movie, which had a lot of cool ideas, for most of the movie, it's fine. I have no problem with how they approach it, the mythology behind it all. Great. But when you end up having writing that overtakes good storytelling, people are going to get lost with that. And not everybody hates it. I'm just happen to be one of them that does. I think Anthony kind of feels the same way. Once you start losing sight of that, like the only thing I could take out of the end was we get that nice little reflection where Anthony's face turns into Daniel Robitaille. Like that's the one moment that I thought, oh, cool. We finally get to see Candyman. But it's only kind of short-lived, and I just hated that they ended it that way because I know I've seen some reviews where they talked about...
We had gotten him to speak just one line.
Yeah. And so they just, for a movie that had so much going for it throughout most of it, it just unraveled so quickly because they felt like they had to make a point about our current social standing with stuff. And I hate that. And I know that Jordan Peele and Nia DaCosta, they're out there trying to make their own films with their own messages. It's important to them, so that's fine. But I don't know. Whenever if I was ever a director and I wanted to make a movie and it didn't matter who the color or people I was using or the sex, I'm trying to make it for everybody. And even if I'm going to go within some sort of subplot where it's going to be dealing with serious issues, I'd want to make sure that it still encompasses everybody and keeps them all engaged. I think at this point, by the end of the film, it kind of loses that. And it's an unfortunate thing for me. So, I mean, it's not a terrible movie. It's just, I hate that part of it. I know
let's compare it to the first one where the first one was very much a lot of social commentary too, but it was also subtle. It was subtext. Like they didn't feel like they had to constantly, and again, I'm not saying the fourth movie is a terrible movie. It's got a lot of great things going for it, but they just kind of needed to dial it back and not be as heavy-handed. That being said, after hearing all of you guys just praise the movie, I do kind of at some point want to kind of revisit it and look at it in a new way. But again, this isn't the only film. It's sadly become too common in Hollywood where they'll just want to hammer the message to the detriment of the story, and I just wish we can get away from that.
During a real life event that's kind of happening that shocked the nation or whatever, they then have
I
to
was
do
going
a
to
movie
say,
where
yeah, because like when they made this movie, that whole thing was happening. I'm sure that influenced it a lot.
yeah,
Like,
well, it
but do you
also,
think if
now
that
that you've
wasn't,
mentioned it all,
yeah,
I'm
I was going to
just
say,
like I said, I was
what's
going
that
to
on your
say,
Godzilla head? What's that on your Godzilla head back there? What's on your Godzilla head back there?
On the
nothing.
Godzilla head.
I think that if those things it didn't, I just wanted to cut you off.
Oh,
I thought you'd turn and I'd go, okay. Anyway, no. I just wanted to say, do you guys think that if that wasn't happening at the time, that this wouldn't be influenced by that, or do you think it would have been like that anyway?
A part of me thinks I don't know if this was would have got made. I think what might have happened, because I don't even know if they had already started talking about the film and it was already getting made, or they were halfway through, say, a story, writing the story or writing a script, and then them events took place and they were like, right, we need to add this in because it's important. Where
yeah, the thing that I've learned, and I don't have all the articles and stuff in front of me, but even during the first Candyman, there was a big backlash from Black America because Virginia Madsen was the white lead. Like, they had a real problem with that. They didn't have a problem with Tony Todd. They had a problem with her. Because as you said it, you guys mentioned it, at the end, she sort of becomes this hero. So it's like Black America kind of looked at like, oh my God, we just made white woman the hero again, and made Candyman the enemy. So despite him being like this iconic figure who we all can empathize with and sympathize because of what happened to him, because nobody wants to talk nuance. They don't ever want to talk nuance with film. And so they just wanted to focus on the fact that a white woman was starring in the film and that she survived being the hero. And so fast forward to now, we're in the midst of this DEI woke culture. I think it would have still gotten made despite whatever happened with I forget the guy's name, George Floyd. So despite what happened with that, it probably still would have gotten made, especially when you have Jordan Peele already on this high rise after Get Out and everything else. He's been a pretty popular director. So he's just making his voice known, and then Ania is like a female director. So this movie was more of Black America getting control of the character that they've always wanted. They wanted to shift that narrative because they want control of it. And that's fine. That's a prerogative. If they're willing to do that, great. I'm just trying to say to the people that are fans of these directors and stuff that if you want to reach more than just Black America, even though you want to tell us about your culture and how you're feeling about certain issues, don't lecture us about it. Try to bring us in to understand it, and without beating us over the head with it. Like, instead of trying to make us feel bad. Yeah. Just have this conversation, which we already know. But again, we're shifting again, even just the smallest thing where the Candyman isn't even killing the girl. Like, that's the ultimate thing.
I think that's because it's he's going to, and he sees who it is. Like, it's her. Like, even the original Candyman, I don't think let's say, like his descendants, he didn't kill them. He wanted to use them. So, and then
he was
just
going
wanted
to kill them, though. That was the point.
Well,
they were kind of like the last
he wanted them. He was going to kill them, but he wanted them to like give in, like sacrifice themselves. But either way, he was going to do it. That's the way I think too. Is I feel bad for what happened to him and everything, but do you really feel that bad when he's a vengeful spirit, because he did take a baby? Since he's real, he did take a baby and put it in a bonfire. So is he
Well, I
really?
think-
He's vengeful, but is he really good?
Not necessarily, but he's not necessarily bad either. Like
Right.
he's a guy that's fallen to tragedy. But it's funny because a lot of his anger is in the urban cities. Like it's kind of funny. You would think he'd have his biggest gripe against white people, which isn't. Which is why I thought the approach of Candyman, the first film, was brilliant.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because
I
could you
agree.
imagine if they had just done that, where you had a black man killing a bunch of white people? Like the social commentary around that would have been horrendous. So the director of that film did a good job of navigating that and trying to make people understand like why Candyman exists in the urban cities to begin with. So it's just, again, him killing people is more about building up his mythology to make sure that he's not forgotten.
Yeah.
And it just happens that it's going to happen in urban cities. Like, white people, if anything, it teaches us that the white people of that part of his history would disregard Daniel Robitaille. They like, oh, black man got, lynched and killed. Who gives a fuck? That's how white people would see it. This was more like the urban culture is like, yeah, okay, he's pissed off and he's kind of taken out on some of us, but it's the white people's fault that it's happening. So he's a vengeful spirit, but he's only coming alive where he knows that he's going to get power.
Yeah. Yeah, I wonder if people would have been pissed off, I wonder if they were pissed off finding out that the daughter came out white.
Well, I'm sure
yeah, because I looked that up. I'm like, is that possible? I thought they would be black, and here it does happen. So I didn't know that. I'll be honest. What were you gonna say, Kevin?
No, like interracial, the baby would have made more sense if it was like an interracial baby instead of just pure white.
Let's be I was gonna say, like, talk about like this being a little too on the nose. It wasn't the only movie in this post 2020 climate that was like clearly affected by it. Not to beat a dead horse to death, but Halloween Kills, Tell Me the Crowd, and Evil Dies Tonight was not ripped right out of the 2020 headlines. It was just people were just looking at like what was happening in the news, and they weren't even being subtle about it in their movies.
And like, despite its flaws, it's still way better than 3. This last one is way better.
I agree. I think they should have ended. I think the end of 3, where they take Michael Myers and hire him in the car, this crusher machine. That should have been the ending of 2.
They should have just left it alone. I hate all 3.
Yeah, they shouldn't have made them.
I hate all 3 of them. Hate them all.
The only decent one is the first.
It's like
one.
I didn't need you to remind me that Jamie Lee Curtis is a great heroine. Like I learned that through the first Halloween. Duh.
What pissed me off is she went from being the thing is, the first and the second, she's a badass granny. Then in the third one, she's a feeble granny. It's like, how come you can go from I want to fucking rip Michael Myers' head off and blow his brains out? I set me little house into like a massive booby trap for you.
Yeah.
And then by the third one, it's like, I can't
do
this anymore.
Yeah.
That's what killed it. And then all of a sudden, out of left field, bringing in this young character that becomes basically the new Michael Myers, the new evil. But they should have. I could have believed it if it was a character that they introduced in the first one, 2018, and throughout the course of the 3, they built them up to then eventually go crazy or something.
Like,
it's the fact that
maybe if the boyfriend Cameron had just barely survived and it became him.
Yeah. But that's the third one just shouldn't have happened. It should have been maybe 18 in kills and that's it. But anyway, it's time to rate these suckers. So in which order would you put them in? I'll start with Mr. Tony.
Tony.
Oh.
You're on the hot seat.
I actually didn't think of that. For me, I think probably And these are all very close except for the third one. I think for me personally, it would be I like the second one more than the first, but the first is very close behind, and then the reboot, remake, whatever, and then 3. Like 3 is like, I could give a shit about his granddaughter.
Mr. Anthony Jordan.
I mean, I like her other ways, but I don't care about her.
You like to push in her shit.
Yeah.
Like 1, 2, 4, and 3.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, are we supposed to give ratings too, or just the order?
If you want to rate them.
Okay.
So would you like to rate them? There we go.
Difficult.
That's actually settled.
Right, if we're gonna rate them, I'll go the first one 10 out of 10, second 9.5, the third one negative 25,000 out of 10.
Oh come on!
The fourth one, I'll give it a maybe 5.5 out of 10.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not gonna lie. I think the third one's better than Halloween Kills. I'm just gonna say it. I would watch that before I'd watch Halloween Kills ever.
Well, I'd watch that before I watch any of them. But
even if she wasn't in it, would you watch it?
No. No, you gotta have some eye candy. Okay, so I'll rank them and then also rate them. So the first one, 10 out of 10, easily the best one. The second film is 8 out of 10. Then it'll be the fourth film, which I give about a 6. And then the third one finally will be like a 4.
Mm-hmm. Right. My ratings. So I would go like my rankings are 1, 2, 4, and 3. The first one, 10 out of 10. The second one, 8 out of 10. The third one, I would give a 5 out of 10. And the fourth one, I think still a good movie despite the things you've mentioned. I would give that an 8 out of 10. I think it's still a good movie, and I do like, despite how terrible the third one is, that the storylines interlink and they're all, connected, unlike the majority of the straight, physical media sequels of other franchises we're talked about. Most of them are just standalone movies with no connection. It's basically just to get the main iconic character back into the film, like Wishmaster or the Leprechaun or even Pumpkinhead.
Well, I fucking love that they did the kid from the first one and put him as the star of the fourth one. I think that's so brilliant.
That was brilliant.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. You mean for Candyman?
He was not really aware of anything going on at that time. So to say that someone came up to him a couple of years later and said, "Hey, you were the star of Candyman," he's like, "Yeah, I know. It was awesome. I want to go back and do it again." Years later.
Yes. But and like I say, I like how that auto interlink, like Anthony the child who's saved in the first one is the star of the fourth one. Mm-hmm. How the second one's linked to the third one with the mother and granddaughter connection, the family ties to Candyman himself. And so for me, it's a great franchise. The one thing I like about it, it's not a franchise that's kind of overstayed its welcome. It's a well thought out franchise, despite the third one not doing as well. It's not like Halloween or Jason where they just fucking hide them out. Or even Screams is like that, or Saws like that now.
I can watch 100 Scream movies. I don't care.
So...
one thing we didn't say too is they actually have Virginia Madison's voice on the recordings. Like this is like she redid them, I think, or something for it. So,
I think
she redid them, right? Yeah, because I was gonna say they didn't give her credit, but it's like her in it.
Yeah, so. I think she did some voice work because I know
she sounds older in it.
Yeah, in the first one though, she has a voice recorder where she's recording her interviews. And they play, I think, some of the voice clips from the first film into this one. So I don't know if it's just reused clips from the first one or if some of it's new voice notes that's just personally recorded.
Yeah.
But but still all impressive, still all connecting. And like you said, I like the fact they used the puppet work throughout the fourth one to to tell the story.
Yeah.
Great. But
also, I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. I forget I wanted to mention this stuff, but like one little thing that I thought was cool too was that guy that in the beginning of the second one that had the ponytail in that, how his book looked like a mirror, in a way, and that's how he said it. I thought that was a clever.
Well, I think that was
intentional.
I think that's.
Well, I know. I mean, like the intention
I think that was
but I thought that was
intentional.
clever.
Yeah, I agree.
I'll give my ratings. I didn't give any ratings.
I'll hurry the fuck up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me hurry. All right, hold on. No, I would say if 1 through 3 and then 4, I go 8, 9, 7, and 9 for me.
Yeah. Well, at least we've all agreed that we can still praise the fourth one quite highly, despite the social commentary that's in it. It's still a good movie to me. I could still watch it again.
Yeah.
The only other negative I would say is that they should have had a little bit more Tony Todd. They should have maybe maybe the last quarter it featured him more in it to show that he is the true face of Candyman again. But it is.
I think part of it was they were a little bit worried about his age, and so maybe even though now they can use pretty much CGI to cover up a lot of that, I think they were just going to try to work around that and not really focus on him too much.
But he was still doing a lot of good voice acting, even though he was getting up there in age. His voice was still good as ever. So could we have would it have been too much to get just one haunting piece of line delivery from him?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I would have preferred even towards the end, like rather than Anthony becoming Candyman, I would have just rather seen him what
if at the end when she summoned him, he kills the cops, then he walks up to the car, she looks up at him and he says, "Be my victim," and then it cuts to the credits.
Yep.
Yeah.
The one thing I don't really like in that though is the bee sting. I think that's kind of a weird way to turn. You just like all of a sudden.
I didn't mind that because it was like he's mocking.
I think it's almost like a possession type of film is the way the fourth one kind of works.
Yeah, I get that, but I would have rather like him, like Helen, just kind of like be influenced and, is he seeing him or not, kind of thing. It's cool, that's
the same thing that's been played upon the whole series.
Yeah.
Whether or not he actually exists, they've been battling that idea.
Yeah. But I believe that over I got stung by a bee and now I'm possessed. I mean, it's interesting, I guess, in a way.
Yeah, it is. I liked it. I thought it was something different, but it's like if they had done what they had done in the previous movies, maybe this wouldn't have stood out slightly different. The fact that they did something different with how they showcased the Candyman, maybe that's why they stand out more as well. The fact that he's kind of slowly turning into this thing he's, getting obsessed with. So to wrap this up, I'm gonna ask us all for one more Tony Todd, memory that you can remember him by, that you thoroughly enjoy him in. I'll start with Mr. DJ Anubis.
You tell me to take my time. I'll hurry the fuck up.
Oh, are you talking about me or Anthony?
Well, you're the only DJ Anubis here, you dumbass.
Well, no, my sound was screwing up because I heard it from Kevin. So I had to fix that because I knew it was on my end. So
that's just his accent.
I thought you were doing your impression of the fight last night.
Let's hope he doesn't.
All right. So, what was the question? I missed it totally.
So I said to wrap things up. Why how I said to wrap things up, why don't we have at least one more fond memory of Tony Todd that we enjoy, our favourite performance or quote or something. So do you have a favourite scene or quote or other performance of Tony Todd, DJ Anubis?
No, a lot of the stuff that we talked about earlier, like Night of the Living Dead and The Crow and stuff like that, I really love that the guy, even in the smallest roles, like, Tony brought up the Hatchet series, like when he does a small role, he puts every effort into that role. Like he doesn't take it lightly. And he's such a consummate professional, was. And he'll be greatly missed. And it's like, again, it's upsetting to me that I never got a chance to even get to meet him once. Like he's been around forever, and he's always going to be like an icon in the horror genre. So
Definitely.
I really had to be a part of this particular stream from the Candyman because it's one of my favorite roles from him. And so nothing but great things to say about him personally.
Yeah. Anthony Jordan?
Go back. You mentioned, like, again, with Star Trek, he also played Worf's brother. I gotta bring another great one would be his final appearance as that character because of events that happened in Deep Space Nine. I'm not gonna really spoil it for people not watching it, but Worf's house, which had their honor restored, was taken away, and Worf meets back with his brother, who's now this like broken man who has nothing because of what happened, and it's just another one of those brilliant emotional performances by Tony Todd, and the conclusion and how they help his brother again. It's just something where Tony Todd he knows how to take these like roles and just morph them into something so much more than what's on the paper.
Yes.
Yep.
Mr. Tony of the Dead.
Well, I mean, I said that memory in the beginning of when I was at the convention, and not you, Tony, me, Tony. It was like a funny thing, but like one thing I look on IMDb, I kind of forgot about it, but he was in the Scream series, and I remember liking his character in that a lot. Like I have to rewatch it, but like the Scream series actually doesn't get as much love as it should. Because
which season was he in?
I think the second one or the third. He's the one with the. I think he. Oh God, I can't remember. It's all over the place. Yeah, because that series is a little weird, but like, it's the one with the little boy and like somebody gets taken.
I've only seen the first season, but I agree with you. It deserves more love.
Yeah, it's a good series, and he's not in the first part, but like when he is in this series, like again, not a big part, but like he's very important to the series, and that's that season and he does an excellent job. Like I remember like being like, oh wow, Tony Todd's. That's the other thing. Every time you see it, it's like, oh, Tony Todd's in this. Like if you didn't know he was in it, like again, it's a small part, but it's just so impactful, and he was a great actor. I never actually got to meet him, but I know I've seen him at a convention a few times, and his line was always really long. Everybody always wanted to meet him.
Actors he was one of those actors that whenever he showed up, even if it was just for a small little scene, it just always made it better just getting to see him for a moment.
Right.
Yeah. I think for me, what I'll take away from him is not just his amazing career as an actor, but I've been reading up about him as a person, and he's very much respected and loved throughout the film industry because of his kindness as well. I believe he's a very humble person outside of his career, and I'll always remember him for Candyman. I'll always remember him for being in The Rock. One of my all-time favorite zombie movies is the remake of A Night of the Living Dead, and the fact that he's in that and he is crucial to that movie for me, says it all. Even right at the end when you see the reveal.
Mount Rushmore of horror.
Yeah.
Couldn't agree more. Yes, absolutely love that. And we won't be seeing Tony Todd in much more now that he's no longer with us. But I do believe he is in 2 things that are being released soon. I think one might have potentially already been released. I'm just checking now on the release date. Yes, one of his last performances is in a horror movie called Stream, which is available now. So he's available in the film Stream, not Scream, Stream. So it's about, let's have a look.
It tells the story. In that too.
Yes. It tells the story of a family vacationing at a small hotel as its apparent owner unleashes 4 masked killers on them while live streaming the activities. So that's that one. And then he's returning to one of my other favourite roles. He's returning to the 6th installment of the Final Destination series called Final Destination Bloodlines, which is out next year in 2025, which will be his last performance, which has been obviously released after, and I'm sure they'll do some sort of tribute or honor him. And I hope if the Oscars are there, the fucking Oscars better honor him when they do their lineup. Because sometimes I think people who are known but aren't in that kind of world of the award kind of big blockbuster films, kind of what they kind of glass over and they don't put names up there, he better be up there with some of the greats.
It always gets me how they like to shun horror at these award shows. Look at the early days of film. Nosferatu, Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, the Lon Chaney Sr. movies, Universal Monsters. These were some of the biggest early films. Horror is one of the cornerstones of the very foundation that the entire film industry was built on, and they keep shunning it. They keep looking down on it. Even now, whenever you get a horror movie that's critically appraised, the critics never use the term horror. They use the term thriller. While I agree, there are a lot of overlap. Horror and thriller are 2 completely different genres. Horror is not the redheaded stepchild of the thriller. They're blood relatives, and it's time these elite snobs start giving horror the critical praise it deserves, because it was there at the beginning of the film industry, and it's still going to be here long after these snobs are gone.
I just got a hard on. You made me hard, Anthony, with that speech.
Well,
I'm not. I don't really have a hard on, but that's very, very well said. Very well said.
Couldn't agree more. You said everything. Well, there you go. It's not every day Mr. Tony the Dead gets a boner off another man. But the day was that day. But anyway,
except
this has been a
sends me pictures of him sleeping. Or Mike Tyson's ass. Yeah.
You're the one that shared that.
But anyway, this has been a blast as always, gentlemen. The one for the road. But this has been a blast as always. I love doing these discussions. Because my schedule is going to be tight in December because of work and the workload. I won't be doing a franchise discussion in December, but I will be doing a Into the Darkness Christmas special, and we'll be looking at Krampus from the same director of Godzilla King of the Monsters 2019, Michael Dougherty. So that is what we'll be doing in December, and in January we'll be picking the franchise discussions back up with the Grudge series. But that's just a little bit of what's coming on to Into the Darkness in the next few months. But let's take it up to Mr. DJ Anubis and what's coming on your channel.
Well, obviously, with the move coming up, I'm not going to have as much content out there. I'll keep my top 5 of the week, obviously, and of course with Tony, we'll be doing the Ghouls of Midnight and continue. We're actually trying to up it to a couple of episodes a week, but probably early on, it's not going to quite be that much unless I have the extra time. But as far as immediate, next week, next Friday, I'll be doing my Kaiju Spotlight again, this time with Goji 851 for the Angirius Spotlight Special segment. And then the following week on the 29th, Cinematic Synergy with Mr. Lambert there. And I'm trying, it's for Savage Dawn, which he picked. We haven't quite got to, but that was his pick for this time around. And then later in the evening, I'll be doing another action film Autopsy with Rick Meyer to fill in for Preston while he's out dealing with some stuff at home. And then the 30th, I have another Kaiju Spotlight with Walter Ross to do Jet Jaguar. And then, of course, later on, I'll be again with Mr. Lambert as we do the Tarantula review for, I forget what segment you got going on for that, but that's what we do.
Kaiju Connections.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anthony Jordan, what's coming up on your channel?
Well, I need to get into my Son of Godzilla review. I'm doing more gaming. I started playing Yakuza 0. I'm going to continue that. And I like Anubis. I'll be with the Kaiju Connections. And we also got coming up at some future date, I'm going to be with Anubis for the Kaiju discussions, and we're going to be talking King Ghidorah.
Oh, that one will be good. Mr. Tony the Dead.
Well, pretty much just the Ghouls of Midnight things, and then like whatever you have me on your channel. Pretty much that. We just recorded last night a review for the 2024 Street Trash movie that will be up on Monday. We were lucky enough to get a screener of it, so
cool.
Yeah, so we're gonna make that one of the, that's actually technically a Ghouls of Midnight episode 16, so that'll be on Monday, I think 8 in the morning. I have it set for, and then we're just gonna record. I'm gonna send him. I told him the last 2 days I'm gonna pick my pick, and I'm gonna send it to him today. I promise. But I don't know what I'm gonna pick. But so we're gonna be doing that too.
Yes.
And then I have been talking about like doing like unboxing and stuff, but I decided that my last video of the year will be the last bunch of stuff that I picked up. So it'll probably be a long pickup video because I have stuff still coming in.
Right. Well, for the rest of the month,
you too. Jesus. Yeah. So
I haven't.
Everything you said, Tony, sucked. But I'm gonna tell you what I'm gonna do.
You haven't let me finish.
Oh, that's what she said. To me
and him.
All right. I'm glad you came to.
I was going to say, So that sounds interesting. I'm looking forward to your unboxing to see what DVDs or Blu-rays.
I don't know where that was going.
Because
well, thank you.
Because I was going to say, because next year I will be releasing the Entertainment Headquarters mystery boxes.
That's
to
right.
The people that have supported my channel, that have supported me throughout my first year journey on the Entertainment Headquarters. That's been a part of all of my streams. So I was going to say that's going to be interesting because I hope whatever I purchase, which who knows, it could be something for physical media. I hope it's not in the fucking background or it's in one of your boxes. I have actually, over the last 6 months, not 6 months, the last 6 days, 3 or 4 weeks, I've been watching a lot of your unboxing videos because I'm trying to figure out if I can purchase something that you do not have.
Oh.
So, up yours. That's what I've been working on. But anyway, because that's what good friends do. They think about these things. Because anything in them boxes that I sent out, they're gonna have things that I know you are liking. Or
Well,
know
I
that
could
you've got an
honestly say,
interest in.
right back there in a bag is something for each one of you. So
Oh, very
Yeah.
interesting.
nothing
Right.
bad, nothing
Right.
bad.
Spoiling me too much.
Mhm.
It's all
So,
it's something you guys will like.
But I would wait on mine until I'm actually out of
Yeah,
here. 'Cause
that's why I was like,
better.
when are you moving?
that's why I've not asked Anubis yet for his address, because I was going to
Hmm.
wait till he's settled. But like I say, why the idea behind the mystery boxes is I will send them out at different times throughout the year, so you won't know when they're coming, you won't know when they're going to rock up at your door, and it'll be a nice surprise. And let's get some unboxing videos put up. But that's just another thing that the entertainment headquarters is bringing in the year 2026. No, 2025. I'm that far ahead of myself. But
Yeah.
coming up in December, I will be bringing some more specials. I have the Christmas special, which will be National Lampoon's
National
Christmas
Vampire
Vacation.
Day.
That's what I was going to
Like-
say.
I was gonna say I'm not joining that one. I'm
Yes.
vamped out.
With that one is in the UK is planes, trains, and automobiles. Is that like default grafted in as a Christmas movie?
Oh, it's just absolutely. It's played every Christmas. Because we don't have Thanksgiving in the UK. We don't celebrate it. It's not a holiday here. So it's played all the way up to Christmas and beyond. So
Nothing wrong with that.
yes,
It's a good movie.
yeah, so we'll be doing Trains, Planes, and Automobiles and National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. We'll be doing Krampus. The Retro Classic Movie Show will be We Come in Peace. And the Kaiju Connection special will be called Godzilla Unmade. The stories behind unproduced Godzilla films that never quite made it. But that's what's coming on the entertainment headquarters. This has been Into the Darkness. This has been, the Candyman franchise. Rest in peace, Mr. Tony Todd. Yes, Mr. Tony Todd. Your legacy lives on, my friend. Take care, everybody. We'll catch us all at the next one.